All right, so today we are going to take a deep dive into a case that really, I think, shocked the nation, the Tokars family murder.
Hmm.
We're going to kind of try to unravel the story of this seemingly perfect family that was torn apart by this just brutal act. And they left behind two young witnesses and this whole trail of secrets that ultimately leads to this really stunning quest for justice. And I think what makes this case even more compelling is the role of the surviving son, Ricky. His bravery in the face of just unimaginable trauma is really like a key part of this whole story.
Yeah. And what we're going to kind of unpack today goes so far beyond, just your simple whodunit. We're going to be using a transcript from the unseen episode on this case and examine how Mother's courage, even in the face of terror, ultimately led to the capture of her killer.
Exactly. We're going to piece together the events, the people involved, and really just see how this tragedy unfolded and ultimately led to justice for Sara Tokars. So let's start back in 1992 with the Tokars family before the darkness kind of set in.
Hmm.
We have Sara, a devoted mother to her two sons, Ricky and Mike.
And from what we gather from the unseen episode, Sarah was just the heart of her family. She really cherished her boys and had a strong connection with her sisters and was deeply committed to creating a loving home.
It's almost chilling to think about how just days before the murder, the family was returning from a Thanksgiving trip to Florida. And the transcript even mentions this like poignant scene of Sarah and the boys singing, "I'll be home for Christmas" as they drove away from Florida. It's just like this snapshot of pure joy,
Yeah.
completely unaware of what was about to happen.
Yeah, it really underscores the contrast, doesn't it? The stark reality of what was about to happen makes that image all the more heartbreaking. And then on the night of November 29, 1992, the Tokars family arrives back home in Atlanta.
And this is where things take a terrifying turn. While Sarah is bringing Ricky and their dog Jake inside, they're confronted by a man with a gun. This is where the nightmare truly begins. Instead of panicking, Sarah immediately jumps into like protective mode.
Yeah, you see that motherly instinct kick in right away. The transcript highlights how Sarah pleads with the gunman, begging him not to hurt her children, even as he forces them all back into the car.
Imagine the sheer terror she must have been feeling, yet her focus was solely on her son's safety. And tragically, this was just the beginning of a horrific ordeal. The gunman makes Sarah drive with young Ricky in the passenger seat, and Mike still asleep in the back.
The transcript describes this drive as an agonizing eternity. Sarah is pleading, the gunman is barking orders. It all culminates on this dark, deserted road that Ricky recognized as the route to his elementary school.
And then a single fatal gunshot rings out. Sarah's killed, the gunman flees, and two young boys are left alone covered in their mother's blood. The car is still rolling, eventually crashing into a ditch. It's a scene that's hard to even fathom.
It's absolutely horrific.
Yeah.
But even amidst this chaos, 6-year-old Ricky displays incredible strength. He remembers his mother's lessons about car safety and manages to turn off the ignition.
It's astounding. Surrounded by trauma, he acts with such remarkable clarity. The transcript even mentions that he initially tries to wake his mother up, believing she'll be okay, that it's just a trip to the hospital and everything will go back to normal.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking because even at such a young age, he felt the need to be strong to take care of his little brother. He helps Mike out of the car, and together they find their way to a nearby house, seeking help.
Can you imagine being the person who opened that door? Two small children covered in blood saying their mother needs help. It's a scene that would stay with anyone forever.
Absolutely. And as police arrive at the scene, they find Sarah's body in the car. The initial assumption is a robbery gone wrong. However, the evidence doesn't quite line up. There's no forced entry. Nothing of value is missing from the car.
It's like a puzzle where the pieces just don't fit. And that's when the focus shifts to Fred, Sarah's husband, who was conveniently out of town when the murder took place. His alibi checks out, but there's something that doesn't sit right with investigators.
Yeah, they begin delving into his background, his business dealings, spending hours interrogating him about his clients and partners, looking for any connection that might explain a motive. They were determined to see if there was more to Fred Tokars than met the eye.
And what they uncover starts to chip away at the perfect family image. While Fred's trying to present a united front, Sarah's family paints a very different picture of their marriage, one that's far more troubled than anyone realized. And it's chilling because according to that unseen transcript, Sarah had confided in her sisters about her growing suspicions about Fred.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like Fred's frequent and unexplained absences, these strange phone calls that would suddenly end, and she just had this like gnawing sense that something was deeply wrong and her fears were far from unfounded. Years before the murder, Ricky, just a toddler at the time, found a gun hidden under the floorboard of his father's car. Think about that.
Wow.
The chilling realization Sarah must have faced, knowing her husband was involved in something that could put her children at risk.
Yeah, that's terrifying. The fact that Sarah took such decisive action in response to this discovery really speaks volumes about her character.
Oh, absolutely.
Divorce was on the table, but Fred had threatened to take the boys away from her. So she made this calculated decision to hire a private investigator.
This wasn't about simply escaping a bad marriage. It was a strategic move to gather evidence to ensure she could protect her sons in any potential custody battle.
Right.
And she didn't stop there.
No. The transcript reveals that Sara even went so far as to search Fred's office while he was away, uncovering incriminating documents that pointed to illegal activities, potentially even money laundering.
You can really see her legal mind at work here,
Absolutely.
meticulously gathering evidence to expose the truth.
Yeah.
It's almost as if she had a premonition of what was to come, and tragically her fears became reality.
Right.
But even in death, Sarah's actions provided the key to unraveling this complex web of deceit. She had entrusted those documents to her sister with instructions to take them to the police if anything were to happen to her.
Wow. And true to her word, Sarah's sister handed over the documents to investigators. It turns out the FBI already had Fred on their radar. This new information, coupled with the inconsistencies in his statements and his suspicious behavior after Sarah's death, really solidified their belief that he was somehow involved.
But suspicion wasn't enough. They needed hard evidence to link Fred to the murder, and that's when a woman came forward with crucial information about her brother, Curtis Rower.
Okay.
Rower, a drug addict with a criminal history, confessed to shooting Sarah but claimed he hadn't orchestrated the murder. He pointed the finger at another man, Eddie Lawrence, who he alleged paid him $5,000 to carry out the hit.
Oh, yeah.
And wouldn't you know, Eddie Lawrence was Fred Tokars' business partner.
Oh, my God.
Suddenly, the pieces of this puzzle began to fall into place.
Yeah, it seems that Fred, fearing exposure from Sarah's investigation, had hired Lawrence to kill her. And Lawrence, unwilling to do it himself, subcontracted the job to Rower. It's just a chilling example of how desperation and greed can lead people down such a dark path.
And all of this is unfolding while Ricky and Mike are still living under Fred's care. The authorities know he's a suspect, but they need more evidence before they can act. It's a race against time, and the boys are in a terrifyingly vulnerable position.
What's remarkable is how the lack of forced entry at the crime scene played a pivotal role in the investigation. It suggested to investigators that someone Sarah trusted was involved, immediately shifting their focus to Fred.
Remember that trip to Florida for Christmas shortly after Sarah's murder? While the Ambrusco family was trying to create a sense of normalcy for Ricky and Mike, Fred was unraveling.
Yeah, his suicide attempt in that Florida motel room wasn't just about guilt. It was a narcissistic attempt to control the narrative, even in defeat, leaving behind a note that hinted at involvement but offered no real confession.
And the suicide attempt backfired. It only intensified the suspicion against him. The authorities knew they had to get Lawrence to talk if they wanted to build a solid case against Fred.
And after months of silence, Lawrence finally cracked. He revealed the chilling truth that Fred had approached him about killing Sarah because she knew too much about his criminal activities. Lawrence even shared that he tried to reason with Fred, suggesting divorce. But Fred was adamant.
Fred believed Sarah had to be silenced permanently. And let's not forget the life insurance policies. Fred had taken out 3 policies on Sarah totaling $1.75 million. It paints a clear picture of premeditation, a cold-hearted calculation.
Absolutely. Fred was willing to sacrifice his wife and risk the well-being of his children for his own gain. It's a horrifying realization. The authorities now had the confession they needed, but Fred was still with the boys in Florida. The arrest had to be carefully planned to ensure their safety.
They knew Fred was becoming increasingly agitated by the media attention, so in a clever move, the authorities posed as journalists and staked out his mother's condo where he was staying with the boys.
It was a brilliant strategy.
Yeah.
They used Fred's own ego against him. And sure enough, he took the bait. Fred came out to confront the reporters, giving the police the opportunity to apprehend him without endangering Ricky and Mike.
It was a testament to the meticulous planning and dedication of everyone involved. Finally, after months of fear and uncertainty, Ricky and Mike were safe from their father. But their journey was far from over court. Ricky, the brave little boy who turned off the car and led his brother to safety, now had to face another daunting challenge, testifying against his own father in court. The prosecution's decision to use Ricky's testimony. It was a calculated risk, wasn't it?
It certainly was. They had to weigh the potential impact of such a traumatic experience on a young child against the importance of his firsthand account, Ultimately, they used his testimony brilliantly, contrasting Ricky's innocence with the calculated cruelty of Fred's actions.
And Ricky, just 8 years old at the time, showed incredible strength and composure on the stand. The unseen transcript details how he calmly recounted those terrifying moments leading up to the shooting, even describing the chilling words spoken by the gunman.
What's fascinating is that the defense attorneys tried to discredit Ricky's testimony. They questioned his memory, implying that a child so young couldn't provide a reliable account. But Ricky stood his ground, his testimony unwavering.
Yeah, it seems those attempts to discredit him backfired. It's those small, visceral details, like the smell of gunpowder, the feeling of being trapped in the car, that make his testimony so powerful, so undeniably true. You can almost feel the weight of his words as you read through the transcript.
Absolutely. His bravery had a profound impact on the case. Curtis Rohr was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Justice was served, but it came at a price for Ricky.
It's hard to imagine the emotional toll this must have taken. He had to face the man who took his mother's life, reliving the most traumatic experience imaginable, all in the pursuit of truth and accountability.
And 2 years later, during Fred Tokars' trial, Ricky's testimony played a crucial role once again. Even though he didn't have to physically appear in court this time, his words read aloud from the transcript painted a stark picture of Fred's betrayal.
It really underscores the strength of Sarah's character, that even in the face of such danger, she had the presence of mind to create a record, ensuring that the truth would ultimately come to light. It's a testament to her love for her children, knowing that her actions, however difficult, might one day help bring them justice.
It's truly a remarkable story of resilience and courage. Both Fred Tokars and Eddie Lawrence were eventually convicted and sentenced to life in prison. And while the legal battles ended, the emotional scars for Ricky and Mike undoubtedly lingered.
It makes you wonder how anyone could come back from such a traumatic experience. But thankfully, this story also offers a message of hope. Ricky and Mike found a loving home with their aunt and uncle, surrounded by family who cherished them and honored Sarah's memory.
Their aunt and uncle provided the stability and support those boys desperately needed to heal. It's a powerful reminder that even in the darkest of times, the bonds of family and love can offer solace and strength.
It's inspiring that despite choosing not to forgive his father, Ricky didn't let this tragedy define him. He went on to pursue his passions, found joy in life, and built strong relationships. He embodies his mother's courage and resilience, proving that even in the face of unimaginable darkness, there's always light to be found.
This deep dive has been an emotional journey, hasn't it? We've explored the depths of human cruelty, but also witnessed the strength of the human spirit, the power of love, and the importance of fighting for justice.
It leaves us with so much to think about. What does this case tell us about the justice system's ability to protect the most vulnerable among us? How can we as individuals support those who've experienced trauma? And how do we find the strength to move forward after unimaginable loss?
There may not be easy answers to these questions, but perhaps Ricky's story can serve as a powerful reminder. Even in the darkest of times, there's always reason to hope to heal and to find a path forward.
Well, that wraps up our deep dive into the Tokars family murder. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.